In this video, we're going to be looking at section 12.3. We're going to continue looking at counting methods, and specifically we're going to be looking at permutations and combinations. So we start with a definition. If n is a counting number, the symbol n, and then we have what looks like an exclamation point behind it, called n factorial, stands for the product n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 times n minus 3, and so on until we get down to times 3 times 2 times 1. So this symbol that looks like an exclamation point in math is not an exclamation point. That is a factorial symbol. And so again, n factorial means we're going to take the number n, then times the next lowest number, times the next lowest number, times the next lowest number, and so on until we get to 3, 2, 1 multiplied together. Further, 1 factorial is equal to 1, and 0 factorial is equal to 1. These are definitions. So 0 factorial, when you see that, is equal to 1. So in example 1, we want to compute each of the following. So 7 factorial, by this definition, means we're going to start with 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So if we figure out what 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 is, that is what 7 factorial works out to be. So 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, that is 5040. So 5040 is what 7 factorial is, what it multiplies out to be. In part B, we have the quantity 10 minus 6 factorial. So if we have 10 minus 6 factorial, the first thing we have to do here is figure out what is 10 minus 6. Well, 10 minus 6 is 4, so 10 minus 6 factorial is really 4 factorial. And 4 factorial means 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, that is 24. And we could have done that out probably just using mental math. 4 times 3 is 12, 12 times 2 is 24, 24 times 1 is 24. Part C, we have 10 factorial divided by 7 factorial. Well, so this is a division problem, but we have to figure out what we're dividing. Well, 10 factorial means 10 times 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. 7 factorial means 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Now we could do this a couple of different ways. One, we already know 7 factorial multiplies out to be 5040, so we know that it's going to be something divided by 5040. So if we multiplied out the 10 times 9 times 8 all the way down to 1, we could take that number divided by 5040. But this is actually a little simpler than that, because if we think about fractions and the fact that we can cancel, look, we can cancel this 7 with this 7, and 6 with 6, and 5 with 5, and 4 with 4, 3 with 3, 2 with 2, and really even 1 with 1. So really all we're left with is 10 times 9 times 8. Well, if we do 10 times 9 times 8, that is 720. So 10 factorial divided by 7 factorial is 720. Part D, we have 9 factorial divided by 6 factorial, 3 factorial. Well, again, 9 factorial means 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. 6 factorial means 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And then 3 factorial means 3 times 2 times 1. So that 3 factorial is another 3 times 2 times 1. So again, sort of like in part C, this 6 will cancel with this 6, 5 will cancel with 5, 4 will cancel with 4, 3 with 3, 2 with 2, and even 1 with 1, so to speak. But then if we look even further, like 3 can cancel with the 9. 3 divides into 9, leaving 3. 2 can cancel with the 8, leaving 4. So all we're left with on the bottom is this 1, and on the top we're left with 3 times 4 times 7. Well, 3 times 4 times 7 is 84. So we have 84 over 1, which is just 84. So I want to show you that we can also do these factorials on our calculators if you have a TI graphing calculator. So I could have done all of these problems directly on my calculator. So if we go to this button here, this math button, and then over to the probability menu, if you look at option number 4, at least that's where it is on my calculator, it could be in a slightly different spot on your calculator, there we have a factorial notation that we can use. So I'm going to start this way. If I want to do 7 factorial like we had in part A, I'm going to start by typing 7, and then I'm going to go to math, and then over to the probability menu and down to option 4. So that you can see on my calculator I have 7 factorial, and when I hit enter, the calculator gives me the result, 5040, which is the same result that we obtained when we worked it out by hand. In the same way, if I want to do 10 minus 6 factorial, I can do parenthesis, 10 minus 6, close parenthesis, and then go to math, probability, number 4, and that gives me the result of 24. If I want to do 10 factorial divided by 7 factorial, I can do 10 math probability factorial divided by 7 math probability factorial, and so I get the result of 720, which is the same result that we obtained previously when we worked it out by hand. And then finally, part D, we have 9 factorial over 6 factorial, 3 factorial. Now this one has a little bit more of a twist to it, but we can still type this in our calculator. I can start by doing 9 math probability and number 4 factorial. So I have 9 factorial divided by. Now the tricky part here is that I have to divide by this entire result that's in the denominator. So I'm going to have to put that 6 factorial, 3 factorial in parentheses to make sure that the calculator calculates that before it does the division. So put that in parentheses, then 6 math probability factorial, and then 3 math probability factorial, close the parentheses. So again, I can type this in, I just have to be sure to put the denominator inside parentheses, and so that gives me the result 84. And just for the sake of showing you that the parentheses here are important, if I had typed in 9 factorial divided by 6 factorial, 3 factorial, without putting the 6 factorial, 3 factorial in parentheses, so if I type that in like that, notice that I get an incorrect answer of 3024. The reason is because what the calculator does in that case, if I type in 9 factorial divided by 6 factorial, 3 factorial, what the calculator does is it does 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 divided by 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. That is the 6 factorial. And then it multiplies by 3 times 2 times 1, but it doesn't have that 3 times 2 times 1 in the denominator, so it's effectively in the numerator. And so if I don't put that 6 factorial, 3 factorial in parentheses, this is why I get the incorrect answer. So you must, on a problem like this, put that denominator in parentheses. Next, we're going to look at permutations, and we'll do that in a new video.